The right-wing self-help guru made waves when he first appeared on the internet with some controversial opinions, some not, and a highly articulate way of conveying either. Jordan Peterson grew popular amongst young men by speaking on a lot of issues they faced in today's society. Recently, he came on to do an interview on why young women are victimized and insecure in today's time, and we watched the entire thing unable to look away. So stay tuned to hear everything that Peterson's had to say. Firstly, why are young women so anxious according to Peterson? Jordan Peterson joked with the interviewer, saying that girls were doing much better than boys at an academic level since preschool, but lagged behind in mental health. He agreed that women were more anxious and depressed since they were told from a young age that they were victims and that they were oppressed. Even though most women in the West are the furthest from being oppressed, they still manage to get caught in that narrative, according to Peterson. The reason for their depression is that they become self-conscious. And in the wise words of Peterson, the more you think about yourself, the more unhappy you are. He said that statistically, there's almost no difference between the impact of negative emotions like depression and the self-conscious thought processes involving the I. So, obsessive self-centeredness made women suffer a whole lot more. He said that a certain loop forms in their brains that women start viewing themselves as victims to whom bad things are constantly happening. This keeps them in a place of subservience, thinking that they will be victims for their entire lives. But he said that if you instead view yourself as an actor of your destiny, you are just putting your body under constant stress, which isn't ideal either. Moving on to Jordan Peterson thinks confusion keeps women in the loop. He then talked about many other factors that confuse young women nowadays. Confusion on the sexual front involves the idea that women have to be properly liberated to be sexually free. He completely disagreed with that notion and said that's just not how life is supposed to work. This idea completely dismissed the fact that some women do not require multiple partners to feel sexually liberated. Peterson linked the sexual front with the status of women in society. He said it's the capacity and the freedom to say no that gives young women status, and that's the kind of liberation they should seek instead. Young women remain at a societal disadvantage because they are competing for partners of higher social status. And Peterson said that it's an everlasting fact that higher status males are harder to find. So, when women say no to a societally acceptable and desirable young man, they are saying that they have something to offer their partner, which can't be taken even if you're of the highest status. What that did was that it gave women a kind of status that was held in extremely high regard. But Peterson continued and said that it's becoming harder to find nowadays since the entire concept has been blown apart in the name of sexual freedom. In his eyes, young women are so confused nowadays because they have been deprived of that status, and the men are aware of that subconsciously. Next, how Peterson believes it's affecting men. The psychologist believes that young men actually respect women who turn them down much more. Even though they might complain and gossip about them later, they still possess an instinct that makes them realize the value of something they can't obtain. The interviewer tried saying that the sexual and liberation movements of late for women seem to advantage men instead of women, who it is aimed for. But Peterson shut her down and said that according to data, it clearly doesn't. He said these liberation movements only benefit a small portion of hyper-successful, very predatory and promiscuous men. When the sexual constraints are lifted off women in society, they all flock towards the 5% of high-status men, and then they have a field of unlimited sexual access. But it's of no benefit to either side. Peterson said that what it does is that it imbalances society. It trains men to turn into manipulative and instrumental psychopaths because all they are doing is running after pleasure-based relationships. They forget how nurturing and healthy relationships work, so men and women are at a societal disadvantage. It's just bad training if you're looking to be anything comparable to a decent human being. If not, then this should work out just fine for you for a short while. The women end up suffering since none of the men are now looking for a long-term relationship, which turns into a huge mess in society. Just plain disastrous, according to Peterson. In other news, Dr. Jordan Peterson on how envy is a corrosive force. Jordan Peterson started off by mocking people on the radical left side who couldn't organize themselves to stage a proper protest against him. So far, nothing has come up in Australia the entire time the psychologist was there. The interviewer asked him if he felt that conservative politicians in countries like Australia needed to be shown a direction in which they should share their message. He started off by saying that he agreed that conservatives were quite good at implementing, but weren't all that fantastic in creating a vision to follow. He noted that it was actually a sign of being conservative that you didn't have a vision, since they would follow the paths already laid out for them. Boundaries and guidelines laid down by institutions, such as religion, would make up most of the foundation for laws and regulations. The disadvantage they have is that when they are pushed pushed and inquired about their vision, they are never able to articulate it as well as someone who has had to question themselves their entire lives. When asked to defend an institution like marriage, most conservatives wouldn't have even thought about why marriage is the way that it is, since it's been so solidly established in their minds. It's part of the general consensus of value and has been around for ages and ages. Even articulating it to this extent would be quite an achievement for most, but Peterson pulls it off with ease. This assault and accusatory tone towards conservatives is all about power. Then Peterson started asking about the privilege to even begin to ask these questions. Coming up, the idea of equality bringing envy. What is privilege? Where does it come from? And can you earn it? These are all questions that are asked by people who offer nothing to society except to cause trouble because of how envious they are. He warned that although envy is a great motivational force, it can be morally corrosive in the long run. If you believe everything is about power and those having more power than you must have done something unfair to get it, well, it's quite easy to slip into a downward spiral. It's very convenient for that person, and they don't really have to change anything about themselves. That's where the idea of being morally obligated to steal power back comes from, and it allows people to act on their envy. A belief system that allows that brings about very confusing questions. If no one can have more than anyone else, then that means that no one should have anything at all, because there is no way the world will ever get to a place where everything is equally distributed. Peterson warned that trying to achieve equity is attractive in an instinctive way for most people. If you're walking down the road and you see a homeless person struggling in the cold, your moral compass kicks in, and you wish that society wasn't structured in the way that it is. Everybody should have the same kind of access to basic human necessities. It produces a string of conscience, a connection to God, as you thank your Creator for your circumstances. So according to him, you might look for easy solutions or explanations, finishing off with, can tyranny's reign end? It's easy to find that view attractive, but he says that it takes education and great understanding to rise above that. Peterson went on to say that he believed that every single society in the history of mankind that became successful did so through the act of educating themselves. Although some people do have more than others, even considerably so. We're looking at you, Bezos, and they might have gotten it through being manipulative and instrumental. But it's not healthy to relate it all to envy and always think that if they have that, they got it through being evil. The psychologist went on to say that was the thing that he liked about the way the West is structured. It's where tyrants aren't winning all the time. Even though tyranny still exists, the central ethos is arranged in a way that corruption and mismanagement of power can't stay that way for long. That's a wrap for this video. Thanks for watching. What do you think of Dr. Jordan Peterson's view on the victimized position of women in today's time? And can envy solve anything for humanity? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.